and to give a voice to the 90% of Native Americans that back the Redskins' 82-year history. So, hello, Bobby. How are you doing?
Hey, good, guys. Thank you for having me. Thank you to you, Dan, and Dennis and Mr. Platt for making this happen. Glad to be here.
Oh, thanks. Where are you in Montana?
Actually, I'm calling you from the heart of Blackfeet Nation, Browning, Montana. I had some business up here with my tribe, and got to spend some time with my father and some of my elders here. So, calling you from the heart of Blackfeet Nation.
Great. Why don't you share with us all the things that you've been involved in with the Redskins, the name, and particularly how the Redskins got their logo. I want our listeners to hear this.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And those that don't know me, just kind of a little bit of history. You gave the professional side, but I've been a Redskin fan since I was 5 years old, mainly because of the greatest logo in sports history, and that's the Washington Redskins logo. And I'll talk about that for a second. But I kind of want to step back and talk about the historical connection with the Redskins and Native Americans. For me, it's always been a source of pride. It's always been something that I identified with as a Native American growing up on the reservation. I identified with being proud of being Indian, Native American, Piikani, Blackfeet. And that's what I was taught. And so when my father got home from D.C. on a business trip when he was on the tribal council, he brought a Redskin hat home. And that was, to me, the coolest thing ever, because to me they named the team and themed the Native American imagery after my people. And that was the greatest, most powerful city in the world, the Washington Redskins, and I could not believe it. So I was sold immediately. So I've been a fan all my life, and I've been in the private sector, like you mentioned, in business throughout the world. And what struck me over the last few years, I was working with a local CBS affiliate, is that this roar of the Indian Native American imagery and removing it from sports and society as a whole really bugged me. And then the momentum that was claimed to be with the Washington Redskins name change and this bully referring to change the mascot, that bugged me. So I wrote a story about me, my story about the Redskins and my connection. And what I found out in my research at a very young age was that the logo itself came from the Blackfeet. The Blackfeet, historically, and I'll get into that here in a second, to what we have today on the helmets. And I believe it's the coolest logo. It's by far the greatest logo in sports. And I debate that with anybody. But let's step back and take a look at the history with the Washington Redskins and Native Americans. A lot of people, it's largely understood that Carlisle Indian School, under the great Pop Warner, coached many Native Americans like Jim Thorpe. Right Path is what his Indian name was, and Sam Bird and some other individuals at Carlisle Indian School. Back then, it was kind of more rugby-style football, and these Indians were great athletes, and they could get the ball down the field with a spiral football. So they pushed the ball down the field, and their offense really transformed what we consider football today. It's like in the 1920s and 30s, it was what would be akin to today's West Coast offense. Scored points. They beat the powerhouse Harvard Crimson Tide, and Penn State, and people were enamored with Indian football. One of those being the original founders of the what was then the Boston Braves, and their colors, the Carlisle Indian School, Indian football. They were also known as the Fabulous Redmen at Carlisle. Their colors were burgundy and gold, and so it's largely believed that the impact on Indian football is what helped shape the Washington Redskins today, color scheme. And then let's talk about the number of Native Americans on that original team. We had Lone Star Dietz, William Lone Star Dietz, which is Lakota Sioux. He was from the Pop Warner coaching tree. In those original years, we had some Native Americans that are in the Native American Hall of Fame today. John Johnson is Menominee. Lewis Weller is Caddo. And these guys are, again, today enshrined in the Native American Hall of Fame that were part of the original Redskin team. So we had a handful, quite a few Indians back in the day on this original Redskin roster. Now, Dietz also, some shortly after, held training camp for the Washington Redskins at Dickinson College in Carlisle, next to the Indian School. So we have a history with the Native Americans. We also drafted a gentleman by the name of William Sidney Eagle Day, who is Cherokee, and he was drafted. He played for us in the 50s and 60s. Jack Jacobs, another Indian. Santana Moss has recently come out, and then he has Cherokee descendancy. And then Mark Rippon is a descendant and was arguably the first Native American to win a Super Bowl. So the Washington Redskins, when they evolved from the Boston Braves and became the Washington Redskins, the theme of Native American imagery impacted who they are today. From the Carlisle team and their style of play, but the quality and characteristics of the Native Americans, their fighting spirit, the honorable, respect, never dying, never say die attitude, against insurmountable odds. Those were things that really epitomized what it was to be Native American.
I think.
Now, also, go ahead.
I was saying, I think that it's, this assertion that they were trying to be mean to Native Americans by choosing that name is just, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's a football team. The whole idea is to instill pride in your team, in your fans, and I think that just holds no water. If you've ever been in a competitive sport, that doesn't make sense.
Right. And I want to be very clear on this point. We, Native Americans, Indians, Skins, we refer to ourselves, tribal leaders, as documented, historical, truthful, factual information that says we refer to ourselves as the Redskin Band. Tribes in the East Coast, tribes today, painted themselves with ochre, red paint. We, Blackfeet, still use red paint today. And so, for cultural reasons, for ceremonial reasons, so there's tribes that actually refer to themselves as the Red Man, the Red-Skinned Man. So we refer to that. We played a role in the naming. So when we say it's an honor to be a Washington Redskin, that's what we're talking about. Ives Goddard, senior linguist at the Smithsonian, found after his extensive research, the word to be benign. So the word itself, we played a role in that. And that's something that we identified over time. It has evolved, and the changers have tried to spin it into something it's not. And so there's a great pride in that. So you can't tell me that someone would create a team and theme it and name it after something that's going to be offensive, oppressive, and all that stuff. Words have meaning. And so how we use those words has evolved over time. Bully, gay, for example. You use those words back then, but the Washington Redskins have always used, whether it's a fan or a team or a Native American, have always held it in the highest regards, and intention have been in the highest regards.
Right.
We hear about them tying it to bloody scalps. That is totally incorrect. And to tie the word Redskins with bloody scalps and the actions of the U.S. government in genocide is reprehensible. That is incorrect information. That changer agenda is way off base, because we, the Washington Redskins, are in no way, shape, or form tied to bloody scalps now. Now, they refer to the Phipps Proclamation of 1755, and that's essentially Indian bounties offered, for scalps. But nowhere. I mean, why aren't we debating Indians? We're not from India, right?
Right.
So and then the casino gentleman, he changed the mascot. Now, I want to be very clear on this point as well. The Washington Redskins do not have a mascot. This is a logo based after a real Blackfeet chief. This is something that reflects pride, honor, and a wonderful history of my people, Native Americans in general. And so that's Chief Two Guns Whitecap. That's a Blackfeet chief this was based after. He was also on the U.S. Indian Head Nickel. This is something that they did right. Walter Blackie Wetzel, who at the time was chairman of the National Congress of American Indians, and he was president of the National Congress of Americans and chairman of the Blackfeet tribe. So he met with the Redskin organization and said, look, let's put a real Indian on there, because Vince Lombardi wanted the R, and then we had the spear. The R was based like the Packers. So we wanted a real Indian on there. And so when Blackie did that, at the height of the civil rights movement in the 1960s and 70s, he ensured that Native Americans, my people, would be remembered on the largest stage in America. And we see that today. So when I see Two Guns White Calf, that logo is based after him. That's a real deal thing for us. The image of the Washington Redskins logo is based after the great Blackfeet chief Two Guns White Calf. So when the changers put a slash through that and they changed the mascot act, that act in itself is a sign of total disrespect for my people, Native Americans, my tribe, and Washington Redskins fans. So I, along with millions of fans, are offended by that. So that approach there, the logo, the historical value, it's not a mascot. That's a real life person based after everything he stood for, the people he represents.
Right, and you know, as you probably know, 300 miles north of here on the Navajo Nation, we have the Red Mesa Redskins High School. We have the Shiprock Chiefs. We have the Tuba City Warriors. We have the Sanders Braves, and all these teams. Navajos and Hopis and Native Americans from up in the Four Corners go to these schools, and they proudly wear that logo. And you've seen a bunch of them down here on October 12th. And these poor kids get yelled at and screamed at for being sellouts and racists and traitors, and that just breaks my heart. I can't handle that. And you've seen it. You were there. And we had over 2,500 supporters there supporting the Redskins, and we had Navajos there that were Steelers fans, Cowboys fans. But on that issue, they stood there with us in that big parking lot, and these name changers had about 100. So
If that.
And the paper made it sound like there was thousands of them. You know, so it's just a bunch of BS.
You know, I've been taught to be Blackfeet. I'm Pekuni first. And so what many Native Americans follow is to be respectful. And I respect Amanda and Ray for the mere fact of their passion and what they're trying to do. But it stops there. When you cross the line to the point where you're getting disrespectful, I respect your passion. But I'm part of a movement that's millions of people. And I don't lead the charge. I'm not one individual. It's not about Ray or Amanda or Robert Doore or Dennis. This is about what is right and the truth. Education is the key. So when an Indian that's against us pulls the race card, I'm not going to go down and stoop to a level of argument and start going after personal characters and what you shouldn't do. I'm going to refer to what I have nothing but respect for Native Americans, my people, and I know the historical connection. And I wonder if they do.
Do you think, Bobby, that a lot of what we're up against here, though, is kind of they're taking advantage of that respect and that humility that Native Americans are taught from a very young age, and they're walking over it as if it's some sort of pacifism.
I think there's a certain level, and I can't speak for their agenda, but I think there's a certain level of capitalization on some of the cultural components. I work in the business world where I have to combine two worlds. So I'm talking all day about linear versus, holistic approach, linear versus circular. When a Native American doesn't look you dead in the eye, he looks you at your shoulder.